Going to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Aaron Gill, not present. Frank Kinsella, not present. Robert Zippel.
Here.
Ellison Falwell, not present. Lauren Lewis, not present. Raj Banot, not present. Justin Fields.
Here.
Dan Kenny.
Here.
Lonnie Wong Bassett.
Here.
Mara Burton.
Here.
Edward Ron Runnan.
Here.
Joe Henwood, not present. Beth Fricksdale.
Here.
Mary Patterson.
Here.
With a quorum.
Thank you. I will move on to any public comments.
There are none.
And online, thank you. All right, then I'll move forward to the approval of the minutes from the November 17th, 2025 meeting.
Should approve. Second.
Bob Zippel.
Aye, accept.
Justin Fields.
Aye.
Dan Kenny.
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bassett.
Aye.
Mara Burton.
Aye.
Ed Von Runnan.
Aye.
Beth Fricksdale.
Aye.
Mary Patterson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So I do have a very brief opening remark for the CAC chairperson. Just want to say good evening to everyone and welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. Really appreciate all your efforts. I know some of us were sitting here chatting and taking some time to get to know each other. So it's always great to use those extra minutes for extra connections. I know we have a lengthy agenda tonight. We'll dive into what we can cover during this time frame. But right now, I kind of want to just take a quick minute to say thank you to staff, reflecting on some of the presentations that we've had. Thank you to staff and their leadership as well, too. And then thank you to our board and board leadership. I'll keep this a little bit truncated tonight, but I do want to welcome and say thank you to Kathy Sutherland, who is now the new board chair for the Open Space Authority here as well, too. So can we give her a brief round of applause? Thank you. And it's wonderful because Kathy used to sit here with us as a CAC member. So that's really heartwarming to see her move on. And also Lizana as well. Dominguez has also moved on as vice chair for the Open Space Authority board as well too. Again, another CAC member. Just want to say thank you all for your dedication throughout the 2025. And staff, thank you so much for your presentations that you've done as well too. Thank you for the time to speak with you. That's it. All right. Now we will move on to some committee business. We are going to be moving forward with the election of the chair and vice chair for the 2026 CAC board. All right, so recommendation to move forward with the proceedings?
Sure. Do you, through the chair, if I just had to provide a little bit background?
Yes, thank you.
So yes, the staff recommendation is for the Citizens Advisory Committee to use the procedure described in your item report to nominate and elect a chairperson and vice chairperson for the 2026 calendar. And pursuant to the Citizens Advisory Committee Handbook of Guidelines and Responsibilities, the election of the CAC officers shall be scheduled for January of each year or soon thereafter as it is practical to do so. And the election of officers shall be conducted according to the adopted election process. The recommended procedure is that the current chairperson will call for a motion to nominate a chairperson for 2026. When there is at least one motion on the floor and up to 3 maximum, the chairperson will call for a vote. The last nomination made will be voted on first. And the first nomination that receives a majority of vote will be elected and no other votes will be taken. And I just want to add that second is not necessary. And then we will repeat the process for vice chair. So I will hand it over to you.
All right, so now I will call for a nomination to nominate a chairperson for 2026.
I nominate Mira for chairperson for 2026.
Are there any other nominations? Thank you. Thank you.
Don't hold your breath.
Right, I know, thank you so much. Okay, so I will look to,
You can close the floor to the nominations. And then
Okay.
you can, and then you could, call for a vote.
all right, then I will close the floor to the nominations. Thank you so much, Caroline, and I will now call for a vote.
These on the fly things always take a minute.
Oh, it's totally, you know what, we are just in the moment. Another great example of staff's dedication to making things happen for the CEC and the board and really putting their dedication in. So thank you again.
Okay, I am ready. Bob Sipple,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
Aye.
Mayor Burton,
Aye.
Ed Von Rennen.
Aye.
Beth Bricksdale. Aye. Mary Patterson. Aye. The motion passes.
Yes, thank you. Just thanks to my.
Thank you to my fellow CAC members for continuing to support me in this role. And I hope that I can continue to make you proud and serve on behalf of all of us and really be able to continue to bring our feedback and thoughts to staff in a very inclusive and respectful way. So thank you.
And now you can repeat the process for vice chair.
Okay, so now I will ask for nominations for vice chair for the CAC for the 2026 year.
I nominate Justin Fields. Okay.
So I'll nominate Lonnie Wong Bissett.
If Lonnie wants to do it, I will back out.
Okay, so I guess we'll take this to a vote. I'll look to staff to help with this.
You just finished typing.
Okay.
Mr. Fields, did you just decline the nomination? Ish?
I did. I declined on me.
Okay, so thank you. I
Clear. I was gonna ask the same thing.
His name is a chair. He has a very Okay, we will take it to a vote for the election of vice chairperson for the CAC for 2026.
Bob Sibble,
Yes.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
Aye.
Mayor Burton,
Aye.
Ed Von Renen,
Aye.
Beth Bricksdale. Aye. Mary Patterson. Aye. The motion passes.
All right. Your face.
I would recommend though, you may, if you're gonna stay on, we might consider moving the meeting time back to 7 o'clock because that accommodates you a lot better.
Yeah, it's one of those off and on things, you know.
Everyone likes those.
Is that something that we can discuss as since we have a quorum and we're here? I know that's how we moved the meeting time last time to 6:30 because of accommodations for some CAC members like myself. But again, happy to explore the conversation of moving the meeting time back a half an hour to accommodate those to accommodate.
Through the chair, I believe in the past we did, itemize, put an item on the agenda for the full committee to discuss. So we could do that again.
That would be my recommendation, to put that item on the agenda, possibly for the next meeting that we have on March 2nd, then beginning the cadence of our regular CAC meetings at the end of March. So be able to just solidify that time frame for everyone. Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to review the Citizens Advisory Committee members with terms ending in 2026.
Hello, that's me again. Good evening, committee members. I'm Caroline Hernandez, clerk of the board. And this item is intended to make the Citizens Advisory Committee members aware of upcoming expiring terms for District 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as for 4 of the at-large positions on June 30th, 2026. And this item is informational, so no action is required. Our Citizens Advisory Committee, or CAC, is a 15-member committee comprised of 7 district representatives and 8 at-large representatives serving staggered 2-year terms beginning July 1st through June 30th. And per the handbook of the Citizens Advisory Handbook, guidelines for CAC membership, staff are to communicate all positions with expiring terms to the CAC Board of Directors and staff, and anticipated vacancies due to term expiration will be communicated at least 90 days prior to the expiration date. And so here we have the 4 district representatives who are who have expiring terms of June 30th, 2026. Aaron Gill, District 1, Frank Kinsella, District 2, Bob Sipple, District 3, and Allison Falwell, District 4. And our at-large representatives are Justin Fields, Dan Kenny, Lonnie Wong Bissett, and Joe Henwood. CAC members with expiring terms can expect staff to send them a memo via email at least 90 days in advance of June 30th, 2026. Pursuant to the handbook, existing members in good standing who wish to serve another 2-year term will let staff know in writing of their desires to be reappointed. Candidates who indicate that they wish to be reappointed will have their names submitted to the Board of Directors for final approval. And that is all I have. I'll have you take any questions.
Are there any public comments?
There are none.
All right, thank you for that report. And I highly encourage all of my CAC board members whose names were on those lists to respond to the email within that 90-day time frame. And I hope that you all would decide to return. Excellent. Moving right along on the agenda. We're now going to receive a presentation on the 2025 Intergovernmental Relations and External Funding Program recap. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to give you an update on these 2 programs. Sorry, I'm afraid to touch it. Thank you. First, some quick introductions. My name is Megan Dreger, Conservation and Strategic Partnerships Manager. I'm handing it over to Monica, who I understand recently, this happens to be her first CAC meeting she's been to, so please welcome.
Hello, nice to meet everybody. Monica Nunez, External Funding Coordinator.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, CAC members. Mark Landgraf, Assistant General Manager.
Great. So this evening, we're going to go through the program, the background of these two programs, looking back at 2025, what's been happening, and then looking ahead to 2026. And then open for feedback or questions that you might have. I should note we presented this to the board last board meeting, and so we heard board feedback about this already. December 18th, thank you. So quickly, some background. These are two programs. They're both in the same department, the Conservation and Strategic Partnerships Department. And I will probably say several times through the evening, they're really interconnected, the funding program and policy and intergovernmental relations. So external funding program, that's Monica Nunez, who leads that. And so that's incoming grants that fund our work, as well as maintaining agency relationships with funders and things like that. Intergovernmental relations is Lena Drape, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, but she works a lot on here listed here, policy engagement, elected official relationships, and so on. And Mark is filling in for her piece in the presentation tonight. I'll also note this is at all levels, local, regional, state, and federal. So a lot of stuff to keep track of. This work, like lots of work, but for this work in particular, I like to use the example here of the iceberg, where you only see that little bit that's above the water. That's the stuff that's the headlines, a bill passed or a grant was awarded or whatever. What's less visible, which is most of the work, is what you can't see. And that can take months or in some cases years and years of work before you get to that big announcement. And that, of course, is all the relationship building and hosting tours and meetings and tracking what the agency's priorities are or the elected officials, things like that. So lots and lots of work behind the scenes by the whole team. First, quickly looking at external funding. This slide is showing external funding. This is grants, and I'll quickly clarify. We have other kinds of external funding. For example, when partners might go in with us on a land acquisition or something like that. This is something that's more of a subset, where this is the grants where they're generally competitive grants, where there is a call for applications, we write up a project description, send it in, and we're selected for an award. So it's a specific kind of external funding. But as you can see from the chart, so much of it comes from public agencies. That's why external funding, and when we're going to hear about intergovernmental relations, why they work so closely together. You can see the vast majority of it has come from the state, but certainly local and federal, as well as some private, such as foundations and things like that. I'll also note, this is all time. So this is going back, most of this, well, all of it since about 2012, most of it in about the last 10 years. And this is a slide just showing the logos of the agencies that we've gotten funding from over the years. So they're not all active right now, but you can see this many different agencies. And I'll note with each agency, they all have their own system, their own rules, their own requirements, their own timing. So tracking this many different grants, especially when it's from this many different agencies, is quite a bit of work. And so I think that's the perfect segue to hand it over to Monica to talk about all that work she does to track those.
Okay, hello again. These are some highlights from 2025. The first one is the Bloom Conference. Megan, Mark, and Andrea attended this conference. The purpose is to promote nature positive efforts with a focus on corporate sustainability. And then the next here is the Nature Investment Framework. The Nature Investment Framework is something that Megan, Mark, and Andrea are also working on, and it's a way to engage corporations in the funding of nature-based solutions to climate change. And then, of course, we have the Proposition 4 Climate Bond, for which $25 million of that climate bond was allocated to the Coyote Valley Conservation Program. And in this fiscal year, $3 million of that was allocated so that we can tap into that funding. We'll talk a little bit about that later. There are some legal issues at the state level where we actually cannot access that funding yet. But that's a state level issue, not an issue with Open Space Authority. And then we have some really, really great news is that this in 2025, we got about $15 million in grants, and we're still waiting to hear from a couple of more applications that we submitted at the end of 2025, and then just highlighting the $14.8 million grant from the SALC grant program. And that's to preserve to get an agricultural easement in northern Gilroy. And here is a list of all our active grants. Megan mentioned this before. A lot of our work isn't just applying for grants, it's managing all of the grants that we have. We have 16 grants and about $25 million worth of grants, a couple of local grants, a couple of private grants, and then several state grants, and then a couple of federal grants. And here wanted to highlight our 2 federal grants. Wanted to highlight these because of all the uncertainty with grants at the federal level. The good news is that we have been assured that both of these are secure, and we're looking forward to starting work on both of these grants this year. Okay, and then for our funding priorities in 2026, I have a lot for this slide. For the first one, a really, really important priority is to implement all of the active grants, and also to apply for a few more grants in 2025. Always a priority is seeking new funding opportunities. This can be a little bit tricky because funding sources change, requirements change. So we're always trying to keep up with that, or we're always keeping up with that. And then number 3 is supporting the pipeline of future funding. And this is where I have a little bit more of a longer update, but not too long. Of course, we're tracking at the state level, the general fund, Proposition 4 climate bond, and the greenhouse gas reduction fund. There is an anticipated budget deficit this year, so we're going to keep on advocating for allocations for conservation and climate, especially for allocations that go to the State Coastal Conservancy and the Wildlife Conservation Board, and that's because those are 2 big funders for the type of work that the Open Space Authority does. Also related to Proposition 4 is we're advocating for the efficient implementation of that funding to the Coyote Valley Conservation Program. I mentioned earlier that there is a little bit of an issue here, and the issue is that all previous bonds have an exemption for what is called an Administration Procedures Act. This exemption was unfortunately not included in Proposition 4. So at this moment, the best case is that the legislature will pass a bill, we hope very soon, that would go into effect immediately, that would enable this exemption. And again, this is the APA is at the state level, so we're really just tracking that and hoping for the best case scenario, so we can access the funding from Proposition 4. And then we have as we're the state's Cap and Invest program. It was recently authorized until 2046, which is really good news for us. And a new framework was established for spending the revenue generated for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So that funding goes into the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, also known as GGRF. And of these changes, starting in fiscal year 2026-27, $1 billion would be allocated annually to be spent at the discretion of the legislature, which could include applications such as allocations to natural and working lands. But we're going to expect to get more information on this this year, 2026. And then last on this list is we're exploring funding opportunities for ongoing stewardship and maintenance the bond measures typically only fund capital projects. And as you know, maintenance and stewardship and maintenance is also really important. And we're always looking for new sources to fund stewardship, maintenance and stewardship of our lands. And then with that, I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thanks, Monica. So I'm gonna go back. That's the wrong way. There we go. I'm going to go forward to intergovernmental relations. So just like Megan and Monica did with the external funding process, I'm going to start with a recap of 2025 and then go to our priorities for 2026. And I have my notes here. I'm covering for Lena, as Monica mentioned. If you want to see the presentation done the right way, you can watch the December 18th board presentation and get all of what Lena was talking about. But anyway, so just by way of context here, we do work with consultants both in Sacramento for state grants and policy, as well as in Washington, D.C. for both at the federal level. And we also belong to a number of working groups, mostly at the state and local level, but we belong to working groups for wildlife corridors and for agriculture, a number of those in both of those categories. So let me go to what we've done in 2025. So Megan and I were fortunate enough to take a trip to Washington, D.C. in March. We spoke with a lot of, frustrated congressmen, to be honest with you, but we also made a lot of headway. It's very important to build those relationships and continue that over time, even when times are changing, let me say. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but it was also an opportunity to have some success with talk about the Farm Bill, because the Farm Bill has been reauthorized just at its current status quo year by year now for, I believe, 3 years in a row. But hopefully at some point there will be progress, and there is a portion of the grant program for acquisition of farmland that we would like to be eligible for that we are currently not as a special district. So we continue to work on that. We're also managing the funding cuts, as Monica already pointed out. The 2 federal grants that we have been given, or at least awarded, those seem to be secure. So that's really good news. And then we also do quite a bit to respond to policy proposals. One example specifically was that we submitted a letter of opposition to the proposed rescinding of the word harm in the Environmental Protection Act that was referring to harm to wildlife and associated natural resources. That particular threat garnered about 30,000 comments. And so I haven't heard, I don't know if anybody else has, but I haven't heard yet whether that was then pulled back or whether they're moving forward with that rescission of the definition of harm. Anyway, so it was a very successful trip to DC back in March. We also have done a lot of work at the state. That's really where the bulk of our intergovernmental relations work takes place. And so, as Monica mentioned, there is a lot of work to support allocations for Prop 4. So thanks to Lena having joined a group in Sacramento to lobby for increase of Prop 4 allocations to the Coastal Conservancy, and many other groups did too, not just that one group that we are a part of, but the allocations to the Coastal Conservancy were doubled compared with what was originally proposed. So that was a really good result. Also, in earlier this month, in the governor's initial budget proposal, we had requested 14 million from our 25 million for the Coyote Valley Conservation Program. And so far, knock on wood, that proposal is in there. So it just still has to work its way through the legislature over the next few months. I think the cap and invest reauthorization, Monica already mentioned. So for those of you unfamiliar with that, it was formerly called cap and trade, but it's a program by which the state forces a fee through an auction on industrial polluters above a certain threshold, and then that goes into a fund. That's the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And over time, that cap that determines that threshold above which they have to pay, that's supposed to go down further and further. So that's been reauthorized now for another 20 years, which is really good news. One thing that's new in that reauthorization is that $1 billion of that annual revenue is discretionary for legislators to determine how to spend. And some of that could go to protection of natural and working lands, which has not been the case in the past. Unfortunately, with the budget threats this year at the state of California, it's very possible that that billion will get absorbed for other uses. So we're not quite sure if that's going to be helpful. There are also, or there were, I'm sorry, new conservation-related bills. One in particular that required inclusion of stewardship in any reports to the legislature about 30 by 30. That's the state executive order that requires protection of 30% of our land and water by 2030. So that was really good news. And also the East Bay Parks District created a conservation program through legislation that's very similar to our Coyote Valley Conservation Program. In fact, they modeled it after ours since we were the lead in California to do that. And then we're also tracking new development streamlining bills. So last year, there was SB 131, if anybody is familiar with that, where at the very end of the legislative session, there was a trailer bill proposed for the budget that included a lot of CEQA streamlining. So CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. And there was some cutbacks to that act that allowed speedier building of housing. That was the main intent, and nothing against that. We do definitely need more housing in our state, but it had some other consequences that allowed for what's called advanced manufacturing, although there was no definition provided. So we're trying to figure out what that actually means, that anything that could be considered advanced manufacturing can supersede local zoning laws. And we'd like that cleaned up, as would many other conservation groups. So there's quite a bit of an effort to clean up that legislation early this year. So that was a big part of our work last year at the state level. At the local level, I think many of you may be familiar with the pause on the Coyote Valley Corridor study that the city of San Jose was conducting. So that's now on hold and has not been budgeted for at all. So that's not moving forward. But there was last year a natural and working lands element for Climate Smart San Jose that essentially the Open Space Authority wrote and worked very closely with the city to incorporate into their Climate Smart program. And really, essentially, that element just states how critical it is to protect natural and working lands for all of the ecosystem services that it provides, especially in service of sequestering carbon, so that the city can use natural and working lands to help it meet its 2030 net zero goal. There's also the San Jose Climate Action and Resilience Plan, which is a new plan that's been developed, and we're currently working with the city to stay engaged in that as it develops. We were engaged and commented a number of times on the county rural zoning updates. We know that towards the end of last year, that created a lot of upheaval in the equine and ag communities. And we commented at the end of December, I think it was December, around the same time as the board meeting, it's December 18th, that Supervisor Arenas gave a referral to delay approval of that rural zoning update so that more work could be put into community engagement. I think the county is working heavily on that. And we supported that referral from Supervisor Arenas so that we didn't have the negative impacts to the ag and equine communities that were originally coming out of it. We also are, or last year, we reviewed a number of development proposals in Coyote Valley, some of which came from what's called Builder's Remedy, which you may have heard of, is a way for developers, when a county or a city hasn't met their housing element goals and have them approved by the state of California, they could go in and provide some development proposal that has to be accepted by the local government and doesn't even have to meet the local zoning. So we've been pushing back on those where they can seriously impact the natural resources we're trying to protect in Coyote Valley. So that's a rough recap of last year. That's what we're doing this year. I hope that we get a lot of vacation time out of it. No, here we go. Sorry. So these are the calendar of legislative deadlines, just for reference really here, but we keep close track of that so that we know when to act if we're going to support or oppose legislation, and also when we're trying to secure funding for next year's grant programs. This is a table that was provided to our board in December, showing for each of the 7 board districts, which where there's overlap between those board districts and each of the elected offices from the federal level to state, county, city, and then with some stats at the bottom showing what percentage by geography, not by population, each of those districts covers those different cities. So this is public information. We're happy to share that with you. So if it's in this presentation, that'll be available publicly, but we can send it separately too if that's of interest to anybody. It really helps our board members to understand where they have overlap so that they can help us put together meetings so that we can continue to build relationships with those folks. And you'll note that there are quite a few offices in District 4 for Director Sutherland, but she's been very active in helping us put together meetings with those elected officials. All right, so if you have all that memorized, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So in 2026, our priorities that we shared with the board and received feedback from them on is, as we had done last year, respond to relevant policy proposals and either support or oppose where appropriate. Continue to support those same Farm Bill changes that we've been seeking, and seek special district recognition, because special districts are a thing in California and several other states, but not nationally. And so having federal recognition that special districts are a viable entity for the kinds of work that we do is really helpful when it comes to things like getting eligibility for Farm Bill grant programs and for many other purposes. At the state level, lots of different priorities. So natural and working land protection, of course, primary among those. So we are not sponsoring any bills this year, but we certainly are keeping track of other bills from that others are sponsoring or authoring to see where we want to weigh in and support those. We especially are focused on wildlife corridors and habitat connectivity, nature-based solutions for climate resilience. And you can see all the different areas here that have been and continue to be priorities for the agency. At the local and regional level, very similar. And here, what that looks like is continuing those relationships with our local elected officials so that they understand the importance of natural and working lands and nature-based solutions. So that's a really important part of it. And some specifics that I can mention are in San Jose, their general plan four-year review is coming up. So we're engaging in that to see if there are opportunities to incorporate some of these nature-based elements. And county staff are beginning to work on their open space element update, so we'll definitely be engaged with that as well. At the regional level, Plan Bay Area 2050 is going to be developed, and we'll be engaged with that as we have in previous years. And the CLN, the Conservation Lands Network, which is a product of the of Together Bay Area, that's going to be revised, and we're engaged in that as well. Then with that, there are a number of comment letters that we have submitted in the past and will continue to do again. There were about 5 letters that we submitted last year to local policy matters, another 5 at the state level, and then that one that I mentioned earlier about federal policy. So we're pretty active in that, and we'll continue to work at that level. And so these are the board authorized priorities for 2026. And I think we've reviewed all of those items, but just to have them all there in one place for you to review if you wanted to, and if you had any questions. I think that's the end of the presentation. Yeah. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I know there was really informational and lots of things for us to be thinking about. Are there any questions for staff from the CAC? Yes, Aaron.
Well, thanks, Mark and Megan and Monica. Why the change in the wordsmithing of harm? What was the background of that one?
You want to go on? No.
Or Megan?
You might remember more details than I do, but essentially they were not just changing the definition, removing the word, completely. And so then that changed the tone. And this was the Endangered Species Act. Harm is one of the measures by which the law basically takes effect. That's one of the things
Sure.
that it looks for.
It was hindering in terms of the application of the law, or I'm not understanding why the term harm was deemed detrimental to it.
Right. So if they remove the implication that certain, actions by human beings, like in the development process or something, cause harm to wildlife and habitat and things like that, then that clears the way for there, to be fewer regulations that prevent development. And especially as it relates to the Endangered Species Act, right? If certain actions are no longer found to be causing harm because of this removal of the word, then it opens the door to much more development and mineral extraction, things like that.
Wouldn't that be remediation and kind of some sort of mitigation effect in terms of if that was to be deemed the case to go forward with? Wouldn't there be mitigation effects that have to go ahead and respond to what's moving forward?
Well, I think, and correct me if you know differently, but I believe, currently as the Endangered Species Act exists, there is mitigation required if you're doing harm to wildlife. But if that word is removed, you're no longer doing harm, then why mitigate? Right? That's the issue.
But then word to remove. It has a lot of ramifications.
Yeah, exactly. And so last I read, it was under consideration, but they did, as I mentioned, they received a lot of public comment against it. So we'll see what they do with it. Yeah. One more thing, if I can mention, specifically to you, Aaron, because I know you had brought up AB 1156 during the last year. It was a bill to allow for solar farms to exist on agricultural lands, which of course, we have nothing against, but there was something originally in the bill that we didn't like that would have allowed canceling of conservation easements for the benefit of allowing solar farms. And, conservation easements are in perpetuity, right?
Yeah.
And so we did provide that comment. They removed that section of the bill. And so we also withdrew our opposition. based on that change. So there's still, I don't know, there's still issues with it, but
Loss of agricultural lands within California.
who is paying attention?
Is there a group that's actually paying attention to the loss of agricultural lands in California and the detriment of that?
Yeah, I know
I'm sure there's somebody doing it. I'm not quite sure who it would be.
the American Farmland Trust watches things nationally, but, and there are offices in each, I don't know if every state, but at least in California. At the policy level, I'm not sure who else does that. I mean, we got the,
Being lost. There's a lot of conversion.
Mhm, yeah,
I think that, solar is a conversion out of an agricultural, product as well. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, sometimes it's hard to go ahead and prevent these things from happening, but it's another thing to accelerate them.
yeah, right. No, there's the California Climate Action Network that we work very closely with too, CalCan. They do a lot of work in monitoring policy and also promoting policy that's beneficial for agriculture. So, yeah, we stay in close touch with them.
Yeah, I'm just a side note in terms of the lobbying effects and funding effects and all that type of stuff. From, my standpoint, be brought up in terms of what these funds have produced in terms of capital improvement projects or, how it's being, benefiting for everything in terms of the itemized listing. That'd be super helpful for me to understand, because the costs of the side of what you guys work with is, prevailing wage stuff, and it's super expensive. It's like, it's not like market rate projects. This is above that. It's like, whatever you do is kind of like the gold standard in terms of costs. So it'd be nice to be able to see that, even though it would be probably surprising for my side to figure out, oh, that's what that costs to do that. Crazy.
I see. So individual project costs is what
Yeah.
you're talking about. I see. Some of that comes out through the budget process. So that's where we get more into numbers. I put back on the screen though, all the grants we have and which projects they're for, which I think underscores what you're talking about. Some of these projects are very expensive. And so it sometimes takes us several grants to pull together for a single project because of the
Is that
costs.
much presentation that's made more to the board than the CAC?
Well, individual projects cost is partly in the budget, which yes, the board is who's formally approving that. But they're also, depending on projects, they come to the CAC and board sometimes for an overview of the project. I think they vary how detailed they get into overall costs and things like that, but we can certainly take that back and share that
Yeah.
that's of interest.
Just a side comment from myself.
Thank you, Lonnie. I actually want to tag on to those questions actually about the grants. What happens, and this maybe it's because I'm not entirely sure if I understand. What happens if those grants don't go through? For those projects that are attached to those specific grants, do they just not happen? Or do we then rework the grants that we currently have? I know that some grants have very strict rules that go with them, so I'm not entirely sure what happens to those projects.
Yeah, great question. And I'd say it does vary. Like you're saying, each grant, they depend. Some are very, very strict, some are a little looser. If we were to lose funding, these are all grants that are secured, meaning we're under grant agreement, they are officially approved. It's not, I mean, there is technically a clause in the grant agreement that says, basically if the state needed to, they could remove the money or, take the money back. But that being said, that's not a common thing that happens. And so most of these grants are on a reimbursement basis. So as we go, we're getting chunks of money as we're going through the project. So even if it was canceled, depending on when it happened in the project, we would have already spent, the portion that had happened already. But it is something to be concerned about. And I think we're especially looking at the federal grants that not just with the uncertainty, hoping that we can move those projects along because of not knowing that. So I hope that answered your question. It's kind of hard to say. Some projects would be completely put on hold if we lost the money. Some projects we might scale back. Other projects we might be able to put some OSA money in to replace lost funding, depending on the amount.
Yeah, that does actually answer it. My second question is about the nature-based solutions. I know that was up for 2026. That we want to continue those conversations. Is there discussion around AI and talking about what AI is doing. Out of curiosity, there's a lot of companies that are cropping up that are focused on AI. So I don't know, is that a goal to bring that conversation to those companies in particular here?
So, and through the chair, yeah, it's an interesting question, and we have discussed certain aspects of that. If you're talking about the environmental impacts of the energy consumption of AI, yeah, it's not exactly our bailiwick really to focus on. However, the way it has connected to our work is that AI has encouraged the building of a lot of data centers, some of those in our area, and those consume not just energy, but also water. And as we've discussed before, we've been exploring a nature investment framework that allows corporations to invest in restoration and stewardship projects in Coyote Valley, some of which are specifically focused on water, on volumetric benefits that provide more water to the system, whether that's groundwater or downstream, et cetera. And so there are more companies lately that seem to be interested. It's a little bit of a generalization, right? But that want to compensate for some of that water use because of data centers, so that there is interest in, probably the greatest interest in our nature investment framework is for compensation of some of those water impacts. So that's kind of how it's touched down. I don't know if you had anything else to.
Thank you. That was just, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the direction I was looking at. Okay, well, thank you.
And whenever I do a Google search, I put -AI in the end of the search so that it doesn't use AI. Yeah.
I do have a couple comments and a few questions myself. First, I want to say it's really great to see the variety of funding, and thank you for presenting it like the iceberg. I feel like it makes it very easy to understand and just see the different layers and levels of interconnectedness and how funding can be stacked. I got excited when I saw Point Blue and Valley Water there as grant funders and areas where you're seeking funding from, because I know both of those organizations have a heavy emphasis on education, especially K through 12 education. And so just wondering if in those grants, there is also a point for education content. I know Kat and Mel aren't here to exactly answer that question, but just wanting to ask about that, and then seeing the projects that both Point Blue and Valley Water are funding in restoration ponding, and really thinking about creating that next generation of OSA worker. If there is any, I guess, thought about creating content around what that restoration project looks like as a public education tool. So that's kind of two part. Are you looking at education and the K through 12 lens from these granting, and then looking at your restorations and things that you're doing as areas of public education?
Great. Through the chair yourself. I'll get started, but we happen to have Rachel here who I might tap to help answer a couple, because some of these are her projects that you're asking about. So first, in terms of the grant funders, so Valley Water, while they do certainly fund education, that's a priority, these particular grants were not in that line of grant funding. These were more capital projects. So these are funding a trail building and this pond restoration that Rachel oversaw. So they aren't specifically focused on education for that project. Down the road, I'll let you answer the using it as a larger tool. Point Blue, though, is definitely. Point Blue is someone that we work with who also happens to be Rachel's project. So that is included in the grant, is their model, which is education focused. So with that, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to have you answer more thoroughly.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of our restoration projects do take into account public education. We don't often host K through 12 events ourselves on the field, but we like to partner with Point Blue and other organizations doing that work, just because they have those deep connections with schools and teachers, and it takes a lot of time to build those kind of relationships. But personally, and I think on our team, we're definitely thinking about restoration as a tool for education. It's, not only restoration of the environment, but also restoration of our relationship to the environment and people's feeling of belonging in the outdoors and taking ownership and responsibility for their lands around them. So yeah, I'll get into a little bit, but in my presentation, but one of the Point Blue grants for the Rancho Cañada Ponds project, we didn't do K through 12 education, but we did host the San Jose Conservation Corps and the Student Conservation Association. So young professionals, kind of, high school, college age. So I think that's also a really important connection, is the sort of young professionals and college age groups that's really stewarding the next generation of folks who might end up coming back to actually work here. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but I definitely feel like restoration and education are highly linked.
Thank you. Thank you. It does answer the question, and it's exciting to hear that you're also thinking of early career professionals and how you can create pathways to OSA possibly as well as a career. And I'd like to talk to you later on about bringing some other interns and young professionals out to see some ponds as well in terms of, partner projects and highlighting a few things. And then Mark, I know you mentioned working groups at the state level. I read a lot of headlines on social medias, talks about fracking in the Bay Area and, South County areas, Pajaro Valley areas. Is that coming up in the working group conversations that you're having at that level too? Or should I put my phone down and consider those to be hype media clickbaits?
Good question. I'll check with Lena, but I have not heard of fracking coming up in any of those working group conversations, but she's definitely closer to it. So I'll let you know if I hear anything.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Any public comments? All right, well, thank you so much, staff, for presenting on the funding sources for OSA today and in the future. That was a great presentation. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving right along to now we're going to be receiving a presentation on the 2 completed restoration projects for the Rancho Cañada area. Super excited, and thank you, Rachel, for presenting.
Hi, you're welcome. Good evening, CAC members. My name is Rachel Clemens. I'm our watershed restoration specialist. I work on the natural resources team, and my job is to manage projects that restore or enhance ponds, wetlands, streams, and aquatic habitat of various kinds. So I'm going to be giving the same presentation that I gave to our board of directors, I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, on the 2 restoration projects that I implemented this summer. So it'll kind of be a overview of the summer that I had. It was pretty busy, and I'm really proud of this work. I think we did some really good work this summer. I'm also really proud of not just the technical things we did on the land, but the way that we built relationships with different organizations and colleagues across other organizations too. So I'll just give a little side-by-side project summary of the 2 projects, and then go into detail on each of the projects, and then maybe some questions and comments at the end. I'm sensitive to the fact that we're a little behind schedule, so whenever you want to go home, just cut me off because I can talk a long time about these projects. So these are the 2 projects. They're similar in nature, but very different in logistics, I would say. The Stepping Stone project was in the Laguna Seca area, which is a historic wetland in Coyote Valley. It's a very small project, really designed as a pilot, kind of early implementation and kind of building capacity and momentum for our Coyote Valley master plan and restoration that will be at a much larger scale over the coming years. So it took about 2 weeks. We did most of the work in-house with our own field staff, which was really cool. The main goals were to keep more water in a wetland that has been really degraded over time, and also do just a lot of experimentation and information gathering that will support future work in Laguna Seca. The project cost was a lot lower than the Rancho Cañada project, just because it is small and we did it in-house. And we had a lot of partnering organizations come out to help, which I'll touch on later. But yeah, the Rancho project has been in planning for a really long time. We've had some roadblocks and bumps in the roads getting it to construction. So I'm super happy that we were able to implement it this summer. It's been a long time coming. But we still have a 5-year monitoring and maintenance period. So this is a significant investment for the authority. And the goals here were to extend the life and utility of 3 stock ponds, so ponds that were built for cattle grazing originally, and they still are to some extent used for that. And they've also become habitat for some of the last remaining endangered aquatic species, which is kind of unfortunately a common story. So we have these man-made ponds that we're actively managing to support these species that really need our help. So I'll get more into that, but yeah, about $1 million project and about 40% covered by grant funding, which were 2 of the grants listed in the previous presentation. So starting off with the Stepping Stone project, this is Laguna Seca. Like I mentioned, it's a historic wetland in Coyote Valley. It used to be a lot bigger than it is today. It used to be about 1 mile long and have, lots of ponds and wetland complexes and have some parts of it that had perennial water. So it's always been a really important landscape and resource for myriad wildlife species. But over the last 100 years, it's really gone through, it's really had a number done on it in terms of degradation. So about 100 years ago, they started the reclamation of Laguna Seca, where they tried to drain it primarily for farming. So they built a lot of canals and ditches to shuttle the water away as fast as possible. They removed and burned vegetation. They constructed Fisher Creek, which is largely an artificial creek, to really expedite that process. So this is a machine that's digging a giant ditch that is still out there in Laguna Seca today. And you can kind of see on this photo, there's like a white line on the vegetation. That was where the water stood before they dug this ditch. So we have photo evidence that the water used to be 4 or 5, maybe even more feet higher than it is today. These are photos of they're digging ditches and putting in what are called tile drains. They're underground drains that connect to that ditch and just expedite even further the shuttling of water away. And this is also photos of them burning and removing all the willows and tules and native vegetation. So it's pretty unique to have photo documentation of what happened at a site. We don't always get this. So yeah, it's really interesting and yeah, it's good to know exactly what they did out there, and it gets you thinking about how we can restore it back. So this is kind of the current landscape. So this is, the wetland that forms seasonally. It's not as big or as deep as it once was, but it's still there. It's kind of a miracle wetland that's still there at all. And now we have this surface connection from Laguna Seca to Coyote Creek that didn't used to be there. All the water just used to kind of terminate in this basin, and maybe it would move in really big flood events. Coyote Valley and Coyote Creek would interact, but not as much as it does today. And then we also have this dam, the Laguna Seca Dam, that was built in 2006. That's kind of a related but separate issue. So we have a very strange little landscape out there currently. So the goal of the Stepping Stone project was to explore and restore the natural hydrology. We wanted to look for those old tile drains from over 100 years ago, and we wanted to change that long straight ditch that was dug in 1916 and see if we could make it a little more complex and back up water using a technique called beaver dam analogs. And both actions were intended to gather information, just like, what the heck is out there under the ground, and is it something we're going to have to deal with in future restoration projects, and just keep more water in the wetland. So it's kind of a complicated looking figure, but just direct your attention to the purple lines. Those were the 1916 tile drains. We geo-referenced them, which is a really nifty trick on the computer from really old blueprints. And we wanted to see if we could find those. And we totally did. We nailed it. They're like only like maybe a foot wide, and we just hit it on the first try, which is a testament to our GIS analyst who geo-referenced those blueprints. But we found that they were largely not really intact. A lot of them had collapsed, weren't really functioning super well, didn't seem to be holding a lot of water. Interestingly enough, tile drain 2, which is the one making the T in the middle, was not there. So we looked and looked for it in multiple places and we didn't find it. So that in and of itself is an interesting finding. We know that it's not there and it's not probably not doing not doing anything to like take water away from the wetland. Another thing we were looking for are these orange lines. We saw them on a construction plan set from the 1980s that was seeming to reference a bunch of PVC pipes that further connected to this drainage system. So we expected to find PVC pipes like funneling away water. We didn't really find PVC pipes, but what we did find was this gravel, which was really unexpected and strange. So this gravel it's definitely not natural. This is a wetland that has a lot of clay. And the gravel we could kind of discern was in these linear formations moving toward the wetland, and it was holding onto water. You can see this picture on the right-hand side. When we dug down a couple feet, we would intercept a line of gravel and water would just gush into the trench. And then we would dig just a couple feet away and no gravel, water was much, much lower. So some interesting findings, so you can see the areas that are highlighted with gray circles and kind of that's where we found gravel. And then the blue outline is where there was water associated with that. So it's kind of concentrated in the middle of the wetland and kind of on the north side of the drainage channel mostly. So, our findings there are like, okay, the clay tile drains probably aren't doing much. Good to know. The gravel was an unexpected finding, and it is to some extent shuttling water away from the wetland still. So we're going to have to take that into account when we do future restoration. It could include removing those in certain areas. So fact finding complete. Next thing we did was build beaver dam analogs. So in the artificial drainage channel. So these are not structures for beavers. We are merely taking a page from the beaver's book, so to speak, and we're building these things that mimic the natural function of beaver dams, which is to back up water and create habitat. So essentially we made alternating layers of dirt and vegetated branches, kind of like a lasagna, and you just keep piling it up and it makes a mound that spans the whole channel. And BDAs are like a really hot topic right now in the restoration world because they're very simple, they're cost effective, you can build them on site with minimal disturbance, they're inherently temporary and easily modified, and they work, and they really allow a channel to build itself back up from incision, and they create more complexity in the stream channel. So it was really cool to try that out on our land, and hopefully we can do more of them in the future. These are some photos of us building them. We worked with a really great company in San Luis Obispo, this guy named Cooper. He started his own company. He's like 26, I think, and he just builds BDAs like all over the state. And he was super knowledgeable, and he does a lot of beaver advocacy work too. These are the structures that are completed. You can see there's an upstream side and a downstream side. The downstream side has logs on it to weigh the structure down. And essentially water just ponds on the upstream side. So this is kind of BDA in action. I just went out there a couple weeks ago. The water is even higher, and one of our BDAs is completely overtopped because we've had so much rain, but another one is actually successfully ponding about almost a foot higher on the upstream side. So I look forward to monitoring these and seeing how they do over the dry down period and see if it can help hold back water in that channel at the very least, if not the entire wetland. And we'll probably build them up a little higher in spring because they kind of naturally compress down, and we can keep planning future phases of BDAs and stuff like this. And I think I'll just add, like, I think this project really built a lot of valuable experience for me and for our other staff just to be able to do something like this in-house. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how they affect the project area into the future. I'm going out there pretty regularly to keep an eye on them. The next project I'll talk about is the Rancho Ponds. This is a map of Rancho Cañada del Oro Open Space Preserve. The 3 ponds are on the southern side of the preserve, which is not yet open to the public. But we are having a trail planning project that will, the proposed trail alignment goes right by Pond 7, which is cool. So yeah, there's 3 ponds. They're about a half a mile away from each other. They're in the Yagas Creek watershed, right in the headwaters. Sorry, I'll just give a overview of the 3 ponds. So pond 1 is a quite large pond. It's a perennial pond, and its berm was leaking, so we needed to fix that. Pond 7 and 10 are much smaller, and they had some erosion issues. We had to put in a new inflow and outflow pipe and dig the ponds out just because they sediment in over time and they become less and less like a pond. So those were our 3 ponds. But before we did any work, we had to move critters out of the way. All the ponds had to be drained. And it was quite a big, chaotic effort to work with the biologists and get our species safely relocated downstream to Yagas Creek. But in the process, we got to get a really insightful window into what creatures were living in the ponds. So we found more California red-legged frogs than we expected. I didn't even know if we'd find any. But yeah, the adult is a beautiful big female. It's about as big as they get. And she's surveying her new habitat in Yagas Creek, where we safely relocated her. The tadpoles are on the right. You can see the one on the rightmost picture. It's starting to grow legs, so it's starting to metamorphose, but it wasn't quite there yet. So we needed to get that guy to another place that was gonna have water. Pond turtle, this is another one of our focal species that was in 2 of the ponds. We actually found a couple really tiny little guys in Pond 7, which we weren't expecting to. So that was really neat to see and gives me a lot of hope that they'll come back to a newly restored habitat. The one on the bottom left is actually relocating itself. It didn't need any help. They are adapted to do that. When the ponds dry down, they know to crawl up into the uplands and dig a hole and just wait until it rains and they'll come back. So, and I'm happy to report I've already seen turtles coming back to Pond 1, which is our big pond. So I'll just give you some before and after pictures. I'll start with the 2 small ponds. This one's Pond 7. You can see quite vegetated in, not really looking too much like a pond. So this is after we dug it out. It's going to be a little deeper. I was really worried about all that beautiful vegetation coming back. It's already growing back. It instantly started growing back, and we planted more plants around it. The berm was also failing on this pond. You can kind of see, it's a little hard to see in that photo, but we repaired the failed berm. This is a close-up of the failing berm. So that effectively became the outfall of the pond and was creating a lot of stability and erosion issues. So this is the fixed berm. There was also a lot of erosion happening on the outfall of the pond. So we installed a new outflow pipe and located it away from the old head cut and ran the pipe all the way down the bottom of the hill. So hopefully that won't happen again in the future. Pond 10 is very similar to Pond 7, like I mentioned. We just dug it out. We also installed fencing around the pond, which we can choose to let cattle in seasonally to help graze if that's something we want to do. Here's another angle. You can see all the plants we planted. Those are little popsicle sticks, kind of almost marking all the plants. There's a floating turtle ramp in the middle for turtles to bask on if they choose to come on over to that pond. They've never been in this pond before, so I hope that they get there. And then again, we installed an outflow pipe. Pond 10 actually didn't have an outflow pipe at all. It was just draining off into the hillside and creating a huge gully. So you could see that gully on the left and where we relocated the new outflow pipe. Pond 1 is our big pond, the perennial pond, and like I mentioned, it has a leak. It had a leaky berm, and this pond is in the middle of a really steep, big valley. So it's actually downstream of Pond 7. Basically, the water kind of flows out of Pond 7 and down here. So this is the berm in question. This is some evidence of leakage underneath the berm from previous years. And draining this sucker took a long time. And even after it drained, the water kept coming back, and it took a really long time for it to dry out enough for us to even be able to walk more than 2 or 3 feet out into the pond without sinking up to our waist in really muddy clay silt, much less get a 20-ton excavator out there. So it was a lot of doing this, like standing around, watching and just looking at that pond and saying, like, when can we get out there? Is our strategy going to work? There was a lot of logistics involved. And I'll also mention at Pond 1, there was a population of catfish. There were probably about 1,000 catfish in there. And what was really interesting is that when we did our relocation, we did a bunch of seine, like putting a big net out and hauling it to see what we caught. We didn't find any native amphibians because we found like 1 newt larva in this whole huge pond. And that's because there were a lot of catfish. And so draining the pond to cull off the catfish, even though that was kind of gnarly, I'm really excited to see the effect that alone has on native amphibians and their ability to breed. We do have a population of turtles in here, but that's because they're big enough not to get eaten by a catfish. So excited to see if we can see at least some newts, maybe some red-legged frogs come back here.
Catfish fry?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. That was one too many logistics for me to coordinate at that time. But yeah, this is the picture. They're installing, to fix the leaky berm, they're installing what's called bentonite. It's this really, really fine clay. And they essentially mix it with the native soil and put it on the pond berm all the way down to the pond bottom, and it creates a liner. And when water hits it, it gets really compact, and water doesn't go through it. And so it kind of just seals it off, basically. So before they put the liner on, though, they had to get all this sediment and muck out of the way that had been accumulating over 60, 70 years. So it was quite a dance of excavators, like doing one portion and then, putting the silt back on top of that and then moving to the next portion. So, and it was a really confined area. So we had a really good contractor, which I appreciated. Here's some after photos. These are from November. Since the massive rains we got in December, this pond is all the way full, which is quite a sight to see from all the way empty. Did some plantings here as well. 2 turtle ramps there as well. And then I'll also mention for some of the fence install that happened at Pond 7 and Pond 10, the smaller ponds, we worked with the Student Conservation Association. They worked alongside our field staff to get some exposure into this type of field work. And it's just a good way for them to get their foot in the door and explore the field of conservation. For the planting, the revegetation, it was almost a whole other project in and of itself. We installed about 2,600 plants across the 3 ponds. They're all water-loving species. These are just some examples of what we put in. And we worked with the San Jose Conservation Corps, which are a great group to work with as our contractor. And again, this is mostly young folks. They're actually all young folks. I think they're all under 24, kind of exploring the field of conservation, and they do a lot of different projects in the community. They do really good work, and I definitely always recommend them to people. So it was great to work with them. They came out for six full days and did planting, and they planted the vast majority of our plants. They worked alongside our staff. And while they were planting, our staff was working really hard in super steep, rocky conditions to install our irrigation line that's going to get water to our plants in the off season. And we also hosted 2 public volunteer days where we had members of the public come out. That guy there in the tie-dye shirt is my fiance, who was voluntold to come out. He had a great time.
Who was drafted?
He was drafted. He had a great time. So it was definitely good to engage volunteers. I think people really enjoy this type of project. And yeah, we've got a long monitoring and maintenance period that I'm just now starting. So I'm interested to see like how the ponds do in terms of stability. Do our interventions work? And do those species come back? You know, do we see newts and red-legged frogs and turtles again? Are their populations able to expand? And how do our plantings affect the vegetation cover? So quite a bit of work done and still more to go. It's definitely a big investment for the authority, but I hope that it will be a really rewarding one. I think that it's really good work that is directly benefiting endangered species that need our help a great deal. So again, just the same slide I presented in the beginning to kind of recap the comparison of the 2 projects. Lastly, I'll note that our communications team puts together some really cool videos that highlighted some of the components of these 2 projects. I think they did a really great job. So if you want to get some cool visuals, I recommend watching those. And Nature Magazine actually featured our BDAs, which is a big honor. It was in an article about flood protection and nature-based solutions to flooding in cities. So I recommend reading that too. I hope that our humble little BDAs can inspire some more conversation about restoration techniques like this. And yeah, maybe we'll start to see more of it in our area. And yeah, what I mentioned in the beginning about partnerships and how it's not just about what we did physically on the land, but also who we did it with and the relationships that we built. You know, for our BDAs, we had people from Post, the San Mateo RCD, City of San Jose, VHA, and Valley Water, all people come out and help build these BDAs. And it's like really kind of intense labor. And it was really neat to just share that knowledge and figure it out together. And then obviously Valley Water and Point Blue are funders of our work at Rancho, and we got to work with the San Jose Conservation Corps and Student Conservation Association. So I think, yeah, it's a really great thing to be able to build those relationships while we're doing this work. So yeah, those are the 2 projects I did. And like I said, I think they've both been really impactful so far, and I look forward to seeing the impact they continue to have. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, but thanks for listening.
Thank you, Rachel. I know Edward has a comment.
I just want to say thank you again. When I saw this in the agenda packet, it answered so many questions. I was out at Laguna shortly after they bought it for the first cleanup. I've heard all kinds of explanations, and we've been out there on tours, but all those pictures and diagrams that you put together there are like prima. It just connected all the dots with what really happened out there. Excellent. With that said, I had a couple questions. Did you say that dredging machine is still out there?
No, not the machine that dug the ditch. It's not still out there.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Yeah, but the tile drains are still out there. Yeah.
And I believe what Rachel mentioned also was the ditch itself that the ditch digger dug.
Yeah,
That's out there.
I
exactly.
misunderstood. That I said, I remember seeing that thing.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Questioning what I was not seeing. But the Conservation Corps, are they volunteers?
No, so they're in a training program, and we pay them as a contractor to do the work, and they get paid, a regular stipend or wage, and they also often have the opportunity to take classes, get their GED or do, professional development or trades, and it's a good sort of alternative or supplement sometimes to college and just like a kind of a career building experience for them. But they do get paid.
Free.
Yeah, no, not free. We
Because
we
you know-
pay them.
Yeah, there's volunteers here that are really cheap.
Yeah.
So-
Yes. No, and it's good that they get paid.
Opportunities out there in planting or whatever.
Yes.
If it's possible sometime during this project.
Hmm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you, Ed. Beth?
Yeah, hi, thank you. That was awesome. I enjoyed every single slide. I have two questions. One is I'm interested to know, since this was a super rainy year, if that helped or hurt the overall course of the project.
Yeah.
And then I'm also wondering if you guys have considered maybe just kind of starting in a new area of land and just building a pond from scratch, and would that be like easier and more cost efficient than trying to fix one that's already kind of a mess?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, first question about, and you might have to remind me of the second question after I answer the first, but the rain. I would say the rain that we've experienced this year has been torrential and then nothing, and then torrential and then nothing. So that's actually it's pretty hard on on things, especially freshly constructed ponds. The ponds are holding up really well in Rancho, I would say. The biggest issue we've had at the big pond was that it filled up way sooner than we expected it to all the way. And a lot of our baby plants are now completely underwater, whereas I was expecting them to have a whole season to kind of grow and be able to, they are emergent plants. They like to be in the water, but they need to have their vegetation above the water line. So I'm expecting some higher losses there. But it's just a hard balance with what the water is going to do. So that's been a challenge. Our turtle ramps also came off the poles because of just the velocity of like water coming into the pond and how quickly it filled up. So we're going to have to, that's just part of the, maintenance and monitoring. These things happen. So that's definitely been a challenge, but the ponds are holding up really well. For the BDAs, I think the BDAs, it's a little bit more about the dry down season. So I would like to see more water out there in Laguna Seca, just to see like, but that's also part of why we do maintenance and monitoring over a few years, so we can kind of compare and contrast with like a high rain year, a low rain year, and see what they do. So, yeah. And then your second question, you're gonna have to remind me. I told you I forgot.
Building a new pond.
Yeah, building a new pond. We could. I would say in general terms, it is easier and less expensive to restore something that's already there. Because especially if you're going to make a new pond, you need to know that the soil and the hydrology of that area is going to support a pond. And that's going to help you in the long run in terms of like maintaining that pond. So I would say generally, yeah, cheaper. But I mean, the ponds in Rancho are man-made, but they were made in an area where water was flowing in. So. Yeah.
Aaron?
Projects, looks like fun. On the engineering design of Laguna, were you engineering and designing for a certain amount of acre feet of storage out there?
No, I mean, the BDAs weren't really. Are you talking about our BDA project?
Without the BDAs over there?
We put Beaver
I
Dam.
mean, so you have BDAs there too, but are you designing for a certain amount of storage for ecological restoration?
No, the BDAs are such a small scale project. There wasn't too much design or engineering. They're kind of a more natural thing. When we do larger scale restoration, there'll be more design plans and calculations about how much storage is there now and how much more can we add and what are the implications for that. But the BDAs were really just kind of experimentation and information gathering, and we didn't really have formal like design plans for those. Yeah.
And on your irrigation above in the ponds themselves, are you using that? There's a lot of natural springs up there. Are you
Yes.
using natural springs to supply?
Yeah, so we're tapping into like an existing water line that is already there. So there's several like storage tanks that come from springs up there. That's where the water originally comes from. And yeah, our irrigation lines tap into that. Same as troughs and other things up there currently.
Thanks for sharing such a great project.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Mary? Thanks, Rachel. If you, Mark or others would take back to the social marketing team, that those little YouTube videos were fantastic that you featured at the end. You're a star.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. And the turtles too. But it really, even for a CAC member who's supposed to know more than the average bear, it really helped me make the leap now to hear your presentation tonight. And I did direct many of my neighbors and friends to it. So it's such a great way to educate and keep the public informed. I want to thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you liked them, and I'll definitely pass on the kudos to our communications team. They do a really good job of taking the highlights and the fun parts of projects and making that accessible and interesting to the public. And I'll just say I learned a lot about turtles and frogs this summer too. I was definitely not an expert leading up to it.
Thanks, Rachel. I just had a quick question or maybe comment. So I heard you mention BDA, and then I know that you had some other agencies coming together. What does your stream maintenance program look like? Is it, is there any type of sensors or monitoring on those ponds that will trigger staff having to go out there and look for their own eyes? Or is this all staff having to go out on their own and just kind of be eyes and land surveying?
Yeah, yeah. So for the monitoring, it's just me going out there. I like to go out after storms to kind of see what's going on. The Rancho ponds are a little harder because it's quite a long drive out there and it's not accessible immediately after a storm because you have to cross a stream to get out to the site and the roads can be dangerous to drive on. So sometimes I have to hike in but I'm mainly just, going out there regularly, and we're going to be working with the biologist to sample the ponds or do surveys at the ponds 3 times a year at key stages in like amphibian breeding cycles to look for these species. So we'll have their expertise there. Laguna Seca is a bit easier. It's a 10-minute drive. So it's pretty accessible. I also like to go after storms. And we do actually have some existing monitoring gauges out there. We've been studying this area for quite a while because of the Coyote Valley Areas Master Plan. So we have existing groundwater gauges and stream gauges in Fisher Creek nearby. So we'll be able to hopefully kind of do at least a little bit of comparison before and after. And I'm also doing some photo monitoring and going out there and measuring the depth at different points throughout the season. So I'll be, just kind of taking those findings year after year and trying to make some conclusions about what the BDAs did or didn't do over time. But yeah, it's mostly just me.
Thank you for mixing your classic science and engineering and also the advances. And I know Edward has another comment here.
This made me think of something else. What's the plan for Fisher Creek? I know that's artificial and I heard something about them rerouting it at some point.
Yeah, so through the CV camp process, Coyote Valley Areas Master Plan, there's several alternatives that we're looking at for water resources in general. There's kind of two major questions. It's what do we do with, the Laguna Seca area, and what do we do with Fisher Creek? And one of the alternatives does have a relocation component of Fisher Creek when it's further kind of the more upstream Fisher Creek further south before it gets into Laguna Seca. I think Nick Perry and Aaron Abear presented to the board at the last meeting about these alternatives at a high level and what's involved with each of them, but that's something we'll be analyzing and deciding on over the next year or two. But
okay,
still
in process.
But yeah, in any case, there's great opportunity to have wonderful ecological enhancements, whether we enhance it where it is now or move it. There's lots of great options to restore water resources and balance all the other things that we have going on too. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Edward. Justin?
Yeah, I believe on your map for Laguna Seca, it showed, I think it was 1980. It said the tandem.
Yeah, 1984.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was, I believe it was Tandem Computers. It was gonna put a facility out there.
Yep.
Moved a lot of dirt. They moved a lot of dirt out there. And then, I don't know how many years afterwards, the whole thing was scrapped.
Yeah.
And that's probably where your pipe was, perforated pipe, where the gravel was.
Yeah.
I mean, they just went in, they spent a lot of money out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Tearing stuff up.
Yeah, this
And
project,
all of that, I don't know why they abandoned the whole thing, but they spent a whole lot more money putting it all back.
yeah, this
But
project has,
They left the gravel behind.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I spend a lot of time wondering like what all happened out there. This property has been almost developed so many times and it's like, it's obviously been degraded a lot in the process and we're lucky to have it the way it is now and we have this kind of opportunity for restoration, but yeah, who knows what all went, but that could definitely be, that's good to know that there was a lot of activity and it wasn't just a theoretical, here's what we're going to do. It's like they started it and didn't finish it. Same with the dam installation. Yeah. I wish I had the same level of photos from that time as I do from 1916, but
They did all that moving, that when they first put up those two huge, concrete things that said Coyote Valley Technology Center or something. Right on the
That's
corner,
on the other
where now
side,
it's
they
Center
were
Tree.
trying to go ahead and build a tech campus out there at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that was a little
That
afterwards.
was before.
yeah, my understanding is that the
That was before, yeah.
Then they put up those two concrete signs.
Yeah, because they wanted to develop that whole, that was Brandenburg's area over there, right? So they want to go ahead and bring out Cisco out there, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
that's why they built the dam so
I think
that
every high tech company in Silicon Valley wants it, Coyote Valley's expansion.
Like, let me know when they want to tear down those two big old signs there on the corner of Burnell and Santa Teresa, because I want to operate the backhoe in front of them.
And then my next question, over at Rancho, I forget what number it is. It's not pond one, it's not the one over on the old Blair place, it's the pond on top.
7.
That
Yeah,
one.
I gotta give them better names.
Okay.
Forthcoming.
That pond had a lot of tulies in it. You guys,
Did
you didn't replant tulies. did
we
you?
didn't replant them, but they're growing back.
They're growing.
Yes.
You're gonna do something to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, well, ideally, so tules can only withstand so much depth. So hopefully what happens is instead of taking over the whole pond, they have a ring around the edge. That's what I'm hoping. But it could be something that we have to actively manage from time to time. I mean, the pond's gonna need to be mucked out again at some point. It could be, 10 years, 20 years, who knows? But if the tules start taking over again, could be something to look at. But from a habitat standpoint, as long as there's some amount of open water and some emergent vegetation, that combination is actually really good for red-legged frogs in particular. They like to have emergent vegetation to attach their eggs to. So something we'll keep an eye on for sure.
And are those projects complete? I know there's ongoing maintenance, but are the projects complete?
Yeah, they are complete. At Pond 1, we still have a little bit more fencing to do. And then, like maybe some more irrigation, but not digging the irrigation lines, just connecting to what we've already dug and setting up the sort of small scale irrigation around the ponds. But yeah, so maintenance and monitoring stuff and a little bit more fencing at the big pond.
Can the cattle come back there yet?
The cattle can come back, yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah.
No, it's just time, it's time in the rotation.
It's a factor for sure. Yeah, the cattle can come back.
Questions or comments? Are there any public comments?
They're not.
All right, thank you so much, Rachel. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, well, moving right along, try to keep this moving here. We're gonna now have our informal reports. And we have our board liaison here, Kathy Sutherland, who's still serving as our board liaison, even though she is the new board chair for the board.
Because I like you guys.
Thanks.
I wanted to just give you a couple of comments. One is that Rachel, you spoke about relationships, and so you saw how many elected officials I share jurisdictions with. If any of you know other elected officials and you want to bring board members or staff just to say hi, when I go visit elected officials, I talk about what we've done. People are very impressed and they're very open to the idea of just hearing about the great work that the organization does. And I think it's just a great way to start building bridges and relationships. The other thing is the Conservation Corps is run by a gentleman by the name of Dorsey Moore. And Justin, you remember Dorsey. And he was a CAC member, and then he was a board member for this organization. So once again, it's those relationships that really make a difference. Quick updates from the board. At our January 8th meeting, we did say farewell to Director Alexander. And we since then have filled her spot. But going back to the videos, if you haven't seen the Badger banter, it's really, really cute and you should. Let's see, what else did I want to let you know? We also had a meeting on the 22nd. And we appointed Catherine Ming Hyde to fill the vacancy from Director Alexander. We had 5 amazing applicants for the position, which is astounding and impressive, and it was a very tough decision. But Kathy she actually wrote the first grant that this organization ever received. So her relationship and what she's done in this area has been very long-standing. She also has the background of having worked for the county and being a county planner, helped do the trails master plan and the ag plan for the county. So she comes with some skills that are just top notch and will really help us as a board as we look to the future. Let me see. The board assignments. Please, I think, Carolyn, can you just send this out? Because I know it's getting really late. So you'll see what different committees the different board members attend. Like I said, I stayed with the CAC. You guys are my favorite. And then we all do our part. And item number 3 from the last board meeting, this is a little bit more formal. It's about the Citizens Initiative. And this is what I'd like to update you all about. And the Citizens Initiative is the funding measure that you may have been asked to sign outside Safeway to support a citizens initiative that could bring funding to the organization. And we had a brief presentation, and what we had is that they have finished their signature gathering process. Pearl Perlmutter, our contract attorney working on the funding measure related items, gave an update that the citizens group had completed its signature gathering effort and turned those into the Open Space Authority clerk, Carolyn, as they were required to do by the California Election Code on January 5th. The clerk and other OSA staff counted the raw number of signatures amounting to 56,490 and turned them into the county registrar of voters for them to verify those signatures under contract with the authority. The registrar of voters has until February 18th to complete the verification process. Pearl mentioned that 37,206 valid signatures is the number required for the citizens measure to move forward to qualify for the ballot. 56,000 is considerably more. So people are interested. Once the registrar of voters completes the verification process, they will notify our clerk of the board whether the initiative petition is found to have sufficient signatures to qualify. If it does qualify, the clerk must certify the result to the board at its next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be on February 26th. And the board will have the obligation to place the initiative on the ballot either for the June 2nd primary election or the November 3rd general election. The Citizens Initiative is posted on our website if you want to read through it. You're also welcome to view the recording of the last board meeting presentation that's available on the website. So that's a lot of signatures. Well, it's a citizens initiative, so we're,
You know,
Go.
that 56,000 they got in 3.5 months and they had 6.
when I go out and do public events and I say I'm with the Open Space Authority, first thing out of everybody's mouth is, I love open space.
And it was Post that paid for that, I found out.
Yeah.
Post paid for the signature gatherers.
Yeah. Item number 4 was CV Camp, Coyote Valley Conservation Area Master Plan, right? Okay. If you wanted to watch and hear the conversation, about what they're planning, please do. This is a big project. Nick and Aaron are deep into it. It was exciting to be able to get pictures and hear what they're thinking of. Nothing is decided yet. There's going to be a lot of community outreach and time for people to give their input, and that's what everybody wants. But this is the next exciting step in Coyote Valley, and so we're hoping that we all get a chance to see this soon. You will be getting a presentation in March from Nick and Aaron, and we're asking that you help spread the word that there are going to be these community meetings where the public can go and look and see what the visions are for Coyote Valley. And then I also wanted to let you know that on March 12th, there's going to be a special board meeting at the School of Arts and Culture. It's Alum Rock and Mexican Heritage Plaza is the other word for it. And we're going to be hearing about the urban grant presentations. And I think that's it for right now. Thank you very much for your time and your patience.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks for keeping us. We like you too. All right, are there any public comments?
They're not.
None from staff or, okay. All right, I will move on to general manager and staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Landgraf, Assistant General Manager. I just have a few items to update you on, and I'll pass it over to Lee. So just wanted to mention last Thursday evening, there was an event in Morgan Hill to announce and unveil a new destination guide for the city of Morgan Hill. They've been working on it for the past 5 months or so, and we are featured prominently. There are a couple of example issues out on our table here if you want to take a look. But we have a huge ad right on the inside cover and an article with quotes from Andrea. It came out really great. Charlotte Graham, our public information manager, worked very closely with them and coordinated. It turned out really well. And it was a really nice reception they had last week. Then also want to mention this Thursday, the 29th, there's going to be a groundbreaking ceremony for the La Placita program. Project actually, and that is kitty corner, I believe, to the School of Arts and Culture Mexican Heritage Plaza, and it's a project that we funded through our Urban Grant Program for $200,000, and Director Dominguez is going to be speaking on behalf of the Open Space Authority there, which is really cool. And then one more item, just wanted to give you an early heads up. On May 1st is going to be our own groundbreaking ceremony for the Hearts Delight Trail. This is what you saw in the earlier presentation, where we have 2 grants, one of them from Valley Water, one from the federal government, and we will have a ceremony that we've already gotten confirmation from 2 congressmen and Senator Dave Cortese and others, and we'll have hopefully we'll have Director Barella there from Valley Water to speak as well. So really much looking forward to that. That's my update.
Good evening, committee members. Lee Rauscher, Assistant General Manager, with one update and one thank you for your patience earlier this evening. while we let a quorum develop, that we were able to get through the entire agenda. I wanted to highlight for you that your next meeting is March the 2nd. It's a special meeting. It's not your usual every other month cadence. And as you heard Director Sutherland mention, we anticipate at the February 26th board meeting, potentially some activity around the Citizens Initiative. And we hope that it will become the topic of your meeting on March the 2nd, is to bring you an update as well. We also are looking at the CB Camp alternative design concepts and potentially the slate of spring outreach events that you'll be able to participate in, help us promote a lot of good things in March. And that's my update.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Leah. Are there any public comments?
There.
All right, moving along to any committee members updates. Nope, I'll just take a shameless plug right now. As the Valley Water internship program manager, I do want to say that Valley Water will be launching our summer internship windows open February 2nd. They close February 15th. There are over 40 different career fields for students to take a look at. They can find more information on the Next Gen Career Pathways program, valleywater.org. Shameless plug there as well too. Rachel, I was really inspired to plug my shameless program for all the great work that you have been doing with the Conservation Corps as well too. So if you know of anybody that's looking for internships, not as robust as what you maybe not what you were doing out in the field, but definitely wanting to give students some opportunities as well too. So that's my shameless plug there. Any public comments on that? Great. Okay, then we'll move right on to the last thing is the subcommittee reports, if any. Going once, going twice, none, then meeting is adjourned at 9:09. Thank you everyone for hanging on. That was amazing.